Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Standing Committee on Education and Economic Growth for Tuesday, January 12th. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome our new permanent member, Zach Bell, who replaces Minister James Aylward on our committee. So welcome to you. Could I please get a motion to adopt the agenda? Lynn Lund. We will jump right into discussion of scheduling. There will be no meeting next Tuesday, January 19th. And so that leaves us with 3 meetings before the next sitting, before the new legislative planning week, which no committee meetings are held during. So are those the 3 dates where we will not have meetings, or those are the 3 dates we have meetings? So there's January 26th, February 2nd, and February 9th are available for meetings. So that kind of, we'll use that as kind of a way to inform the work plan. So keeping in mind we have 3. So one of the suggestions that we have is that we look at what we can possibly book in those 3 meetings for now, and then look at our work plan again afterwards. That slides us into the next one, the discussion of the work plan. We started to talk about this a little bit before, and then we had quite a few substitutions, so it was hard to pinpoint what our priorities were going to be. But it seemed like we were strongly looking towards economic recovery. We've spent a lot of time looking at education, and so now kind of taking a step back from that and looking at the economy. We did have invitations sent out to Minister McKay and Minister Jamieson on they had the option to submit a written response, which they have. I don't know if it would be part of our correspondence. And it was emailed to us as well. So we'll look at if we're happy with that written correspondence, if we want more follow-up, and then identify who we would like to appear before the House opens again. So I guess maybe we'll start with, I saw everyone kind of bobbing our heads. Before we kind of get into the big discussion, are we kind of thinking that we would like to see a focus on economic recovery now? We can talk about this more, obviously, but just to kind of move through my questions here. We had the invitation sent out to Minister McKay, Minister Jamieson. Is there any comments on if we would like more information from them? Lynn?
So I was pleased to see those letters come back, and I thought that was great, but it certainly prompted a lot more questions for me. So I would be very interested in inviting Minister McKay and Minister Jamieson to speak to the House on economic recovery, particularly from the perspective of women's recovery, because we do know that women are just not recovering at the same rate that the male-led economy is.
Any more discussion on that, Robert?
I guess my biggest thing is it is the elephant in the room of how we get out of where we're at now in a pandemic kind of situation, and all the decisions that get made, from whether it's DVA workers staying at home or all of that stuff. So I think it's how do we transition back to what the new normal will be, and what's that look like, and how does PEI as a province fare in all of that, and so. That would be one component. I think there's other factors in, as we move forward, the issues around carbon pricing. How is that going to be impacting on the economy at the same time that we're trying to come out of a recovery? So there's a lot of issues, and I don't have many answers, and maybe none of us do either, but it's the elephant in the room and how we function as a province to provide the level of services if we can't get back to a new normal, and if it's not a new normal, is it sustainable to what the new normal is?
Yeah. Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what Robbie is saying here, and it makes me think that there may be some merit in bringing in the Premier to talk about his Recovery Council. I know that they had them putting together a plan, and none of us have seen that. I wonder if the committee would be interested in having that discussion with the Premier about the Recovery Council.
Which Recovery Council are you thinking about?
They're actually... Thank you, Chair. That's a good question. I actually meant the most recent Recovery Council that the Premier had announced. That is the Recovery Council for Premier's Recovery Council for Economic Growth and
Recovery and Growth?
reading growth. That's the most recent version of that. Yes. Would the committee be supportive of having that discussion?
Any comments on that? So I'm kind of hearing like three main things that we just brought forward there for the work plan, just to clarify. So, two, but to have Minister Jameson, Minister McKay come in to follow up on letters submitted. And we may also, I guess part of that, included in that is kind of the climate change lens and about that moving forward, which is very helpful that Minister Jameson brings that with her as well. So to have them come in and then have the Premier come in to talk about the Economic Recovery Council. Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. If I could just add one thing to that, I think we could probably book Minister Jameson and Minister McKay on the same day. Maybe they could go one right after the other so that wouldn't have to fill up 2 slots, but probably the day that the Premier spoke to us would need its own. Would everyone agree with that?
Everyone agree to that? Yeah, any discussion on that? Yeah, okay. All right, so that technically could take 2 of our meeting days, and we've got 1 more. So looking at our previous work plan summary, I kind of skimmed through it and with a kind of a COVID lens. And so, of course, a lot of our things here, one of the things that stuck out to me, and I'm curious to see what the committee thinks, I'm not sure what form this would take, but looking at the social promotion, which I think in COVID times is kind of brought to the surface even more as we consider the fact that school was closed for a few months and where students and parents and teachers were noticing gaps with students. Looking at how it might look different this year, if we might consider it a little bit differently. I had a conversation with Minister Trivers on this, and he let me know that as far as at that point in time, which was early December, that they had planned on going ahead with kind of business as usual. I've heard from a few parents who are very concerned about that, and so I'm just curious what the committee, if you've heard anything, what you think of that, Ernie?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just wondering, you say that you have heard the concerns from parents. I was wondering if you could just elaborate a bit on the type of concerns.
Sure.
You have heard.
So these predate the pandemic, and I'm also hearing them now with a bit more urgency from, not as many, but more urgency from the parents I'm hearing from. So just some really strong concerns around their child's success and the fear that, they weren't ready for grade 1 in kindergarten, but we pushed them to grade 1. They weren't ready for grade 2, and we tried to advocate to have them held back, but they got pushed to grade 2. And now they're in grade 3, and they've missed all that time. And there's, I think, given my kind of my experience with it, I do fear, I recognize that this is a much bigger issue than just COVID. And I think that we really need to be mindful. I don't know what that involves. Maybe there's things in it that I'm not privy to as we consider social promotions. I just feel as though, having worked with a lot of students who found themselves in grade 9 and reading at, a grade 2 level, and at what point are they going to catch up? And so I think that it's something that would warrant a discussion or a plan or, Ernie, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it absolutely does. And I think, like, when I look back and you mentioned, Chair, pre-COVID, even on the election campaign leading up to April 23rd, that was one of the concerns that I heard from parents was social promotion, that my son, my daughter, is being moved into the next grade. I really don't feel that they were ready for it as a parent, but they were moved on. Then they hit high school, and they're not ready for it, and there's no social promotion. So, I do like that idea. I don't know if it's, at this point in time, given their limited number of meetings that we're going to have the opportunity to hold, and, excuse me, and presenters that we're going to have the opportunity to hear from, whether it's the highest priority. But anyway, I'll just throw that out there for discussion.
Thank you, Ernie. Heath?
Yeah, I think think what you're saying, basically, the social promotion, and also the learning gaps that COVID has now put a lens on, and I think that could be something that could be even tagged upon that, because I mean, you hear right across the country that there's students that, and I know a lot of it's the virtual, they're falling behind, and so how far have those students that you're talking about, how much further have they fallen behind because of COVID, because of the lack and the starts and the stops and what have you? So it might be just something else that you could add on to that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Zach?
Yeah, just to echo what Heath was saying and Ernie, I think it's something that should definitely be to see how it is benefiting island students, or if there are detriments that should be looked at. One thing that I was going to bring up as well is the possibility, I know we're short on time, but is the possibility of hearing from the student well-being teams, just to see how, first of all, the staff is handling it, and also then maybe they can give us a little bit of insight into what's going on with the students. As you and I both know, with education being so important. So that was just an idea that I had.
Great idea. Thank you. Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. I'm supportive of both of those ideas. I think that Zach raises a valuable point, and I would be very interested in having that discussion sooner than later if it were possible. And on the topic of whether or not social promotion is an area that we want to delve into in this block of time where we only have 3 meetings, I suppose my thoughts on that are, if we wait until we're working towards our next report is going to be in October, and this school year will come and go. Those students will be promoted or not. So I would like to see us work on that, and if we're going to make a recommendation, be in a position to do so early instead of waiting until the school year has come and gone. So I wonder if there's a possibility to book, to have both the well-being teams and have someone to speak to us on social promotion. I wonder if that would be too heavy of a day, but I think they both are valuable and timely.
Perhaps we'll come back to that discussion and hear what, okay, that's, yeah. Do I have Ernie?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I think that Zach raises an excellent point there, to have the student well-being teams community representatives. I think it's one of the things that I have, and I'm sure that all of us have, given the stress that COVID has put on teachers, on parents and students, and I think that would be an excellent opportunity to get feedback as to just the impact that it is having on students, the whole education system, and what if any changes that the well-being teams have made to adapt to these additional stresses that have been put on. So I fully support that. I think that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Ernie. Robert?
Yeah, I'll just weigh in a little bit about the comment, I guess, about social promoting of students within the classroom. And I was kind of on the other end of that side of it, where I was an employment counselor for 13 years in Western PEI, and I was seeing the real ramifications of people when they were graduating with a grade 12 and also call it a general diploma or what have you, and really didn't have the literacy skills to function into the workplace. They didn't have the ability to take training. There was a whole myriad of problems that comes with that. But this is I don't know what the answers necessarily will be in all of this, because then you also have the parents on the other side of the coin that want their children to continue on with their friends and neighbors. It also comes into the equation is the all-inclusive classrooms. Teachers have a big challenge in trying to deliver a curriculum to a multitude of levels of students within the class. And once again, I used to work with community inclusions, and we do want our people with intellectual disabilities to be included in society and in the school and the classroom, but that also comes into the equation of, once again, a teacher trying to deliver a curriculum to such a multitude of levels of student capability in a classroom. So I don't have much to say which way you go on this, but I'm just saying you're into really complex issues, and issues I'm not sure if a legislative committee is going to have the ability to resolve or get enough people in. This is a meaty subject, I guess is what I'm saying. And By all means, if the committee wants to bring anybody in, I'm always interested in hearing, you know, what would be some options around that, but I'm just saying it is a meaty subject, and it's one that I've been involved with a lot in my professional career, and not sure if I can figure out the exact answers. I know this classroom is far different today than it was when I was in school. You know, let's say you didn't have the all-inclusive classrooms, and you know there was general streams and academic streams, and there was always students that couldn't cut it. You know, we're always in the middle there somewhere trying to go which way, and it's different today. Is it better today? I don't know. I get into sometimes phonics in school for like when our children were in school. They spell things totally different the way I used to learn how to spell them, and I have a daughter that's a PhD, and she probably doesn't spell as good as other people. You know, but not saying she's not capable, or you know, just so I don't know the answers to any of this stuff, but it's complex. So just wanted to add that in.
And I appreciate that very much, because you're absolutely correct. It is complex, and it's tangly, and it's messy. And so I appreciated Zach bringing up student well-being teams. I think that potentially, like you say, Rob, we're not going to fix the social promotion thing, but perhaps for this year, it being something we could look at. And I say that I think it would go well with student well-being teams, because if there's one thing we know about learning, and one thing we know about numbers on PEI, and I know I say this all the time, but I don't think we can downplay the severity of the fact that 1 in 5 of our kids have been abused, and they're walking through our school hallways carrying that trauma, and we don't know, or we do, and they're not getting the support and services that they require, and so as a result they're not able to learn, and so one of the things we've done well, we're trying to feed our kids, which kind of adds another layer of them being able to learn. And I say that because often, kind of to further answer the question that you asked, Ernie, is the parents that I'm hearing from often they know my background, and so they're comfortable sharing things with me. And a lot of these families, not all of them, but a lot of them, there's trauma in the child's past, which makes it even more concerning for the parent, because they understand that their child went through all of this stuff and they didn't learn. They have a gap in their learning. And so that's something that I don't think we take into consideration enough as we consider education. We kind of look at it in a silo, and the reality is that it's a lot more complex than that. And so if we were to get the student well-being team in to get their perspective on everybody's health in the school, how the team's doing, where their gaps are, what they would like to see more of, and how that may lead us into the discussion about social promotion, because I think part of our discussion could be, if the committee agrees to this, with the student well-being team is, I know that they don't get into the academics, but it may not be appropriate to ask, but to kind of have that conversation. What are our students saying that they're struggling academically, or if we could somehow work those in together, I think they might complement each other really well. As for the social promotion, if we were to bring that in, the other option would be to send a letter to see what the plans are for social promotion, sharing our concerns. I do feel this might be a bit time sensitive in terms of the time we have, and then the next report being due, and it being October, and decisions have been made for the next school year. So I guess we'll start. Does everyone agree? Would everyone like to have the student well-being team in to talk? Yeah, I think so too. I agree as well. And so to have perhaps the potential of having the social promotion, someone in to talk about social promotion from the department as well, is that, how do we feel about that? Ernie?
Yeah, just to follow up on Rob's comments, I certainly have no objection. I think, though, that it's a complex issue with varying viewpoints on it, and in my opinion, it may be difficult, even if we do here, to put forward an informed, educated recommendation with regard to social promotion based on hearing from one group, is my feeling.
Robert?
Yeah, I agree. I just think that's what I'm saying. It's such a complex issue. I have no problem as a legislative committee getting a briefing on what Department of Education's view on that is. I have no problem with just hearing opinions as well, but I just say this is a time issue that it would take some time and, you know, to make a recommendation as an MLA. I don't know how I would have one hearing and say that I could make a decision on social promotion, because like I say, like you get into all these groups that represent intellectually challenged students, and they would have a different view too, maybe, you know, so it's just, that's all.
Ernie?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think like before, as a committee, before that we would be in a position to make recommendations, I feel that we need to hear from, for example, teachers. We need to hear from Home and School Association. We need to hear from, you know, groups, whether it is such as Community Connections, Community Inclusions, that, you know, but once these individuals move out of the school system, what have they seen? What recommendations may they have? So I think that we do need, before we put forward any recommendations on it, that we need to hear from a fairly wide spectrum, to hear the differing points of view. And there may not be differing points of view, but we should hear from the different groups.
That's funny. Just a quick note, Zach, before I move on, we were talking about this earlier, and I said how interesting it would be to have a student who's gone through our school system, who hasn't been at the literacy levels that are, you know, deemed grade 12 worthy, to see what kind of experience they're having. So I appreciate that. Zach?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's very similar to what Ernie was saying, you know, to have the teacher's perspective to say, hey, is this model working, you know, and also maybe even further to that, you know, the secondary education, UPEI or Holland College, you know, say, you know, like Robert said, like it is a very, very complex issue, but yeah.
So it sounds to me as though we're saying, let's maybe park that, and it sounds as though we're thinking that this is a much bigger discussion. It goes beyond social promotion and looks at our inclusion model and looks at how we deliver education, and you know, maybe a time to take the pulse, maybe, you know, once the sitting's done, take a pulse on, hey, how are things going for you as a teacher? How are things going for you as a student? How are things going for you as post-secondary? You know, that's, okay. So we want to, do we have agreement that we kind of just leave social promotion for now? Robert?
Well, I guess my point would be is that if you're going to get into this subject beyond what just having a briefing from, say, a department on their current policy, then I think you're going to have to allocate more time. And if you're going to have to allocate more time between now and February, I don't know how you get enough information to so my opinion would be, once again, if you want to, if the committee as a whole feels that we want to just get a briefing on this, on social promotion and what exists at the moment, I don't have a problem with that. You can fit that in on a one afternoon thing, but if you're going to get into, as a person who makes a recommendation on behalf of this, or included with this group, I think I'd want to have a lot of information before I would weigh in that, only because I've seen both sides of it. And I'll also add into the mix is that, you know, you have to also understand, you know, what do we educate people for? We educate them to be productive in society when they complete whatever their training would be. So, you know, how does the, you know, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce's or the sectors related to the workforce, are they seeing people come that they can take to the next level? I mean, there's just so many things you can go on this. So.
I know. I'm getting very excited.
Hey.
So I guess, so we're kind of at a point now with social promotion, do we want to hear a briefing on what that looks like right now? Do we want to leave that? Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. This has been a really interesting discussion. I think you make some excellent points, Robbie. I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I am interested in having a briefing on what the plan is for social promotion this year, what considerations we are currently looking at, but I also think Robbie is absolutely right. This opens the door to a much bigger discussion than we have time to have before February, but that doesn't inspire me to not have it. I like the idea of starting the conversation now, but you're absolutely right. We plainly won't be in a position to make recommendations anytime soon. But I move that we still continue on that topic and have a briefing on where things sit currently, which will probably create a very robust work plan moving forward. This is my motion.
Okay. So would just see if everyone agrees?
If there's any discussion on the motion, I
Any
accept
other
it.
discussion on the motion? Robert?
So who would be the briefing group? Is it the PEI Department of Education, or is it a particular school board? I guess what the next question ultimately would be, if we're going to have somebody come in, or is it the Minister of Education, you know?
And to add to that, Robert, too, if this is a briefing, then perhaps we look at social promotion and learning gaps, what the plan is to address learning gaps, maybe just to get briefed on that. What does everybody think of that? Yeah? Lynn?
I think that makes sense. And to Robbie's point, and as you sort of connected the dots back at the end, I guess that would be the Department of Education.
Fair to me.
Yeah? Department? Everybody, somebody from the department?
So just address the letter to the minister and have him designate. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah? Sure. Yeah. Great.
As far as the student well-being teams, do you want that letter going out to the minister as well for him to, or who do you want it sent directly to?
Robert?
I'm certain that there's somebody that's kind of the head of the student wellbeing teams for the Department of Education, but I don't know who that is, so I'll go along with the easy access as to, you write the minister and have them decide who they think is the most appropriate person to give us the information that they would think they would require, so the minister would be an easy person to write.
Heath?
Bluefield Family Schools is likely pretty extensive, and I'll have the name for you before I leave here, because it's on the tip of my tongue and I can't remember what it is, but he was extremely good.
And so you would suggest that be
Yeah.
the person that we contact direct? Yeah, I think that we could cut out a bit of kind of
Yeah.
steps if we
And
could.
you hear exactly right from them, and maybe even there may be a youth worker that comes with them, and
Yeah.
because they've just grown it, they've just added the numbers to them. I forget the name.
Yeah,
Mine's blank. Anyway,
you'll think of it.
yeah.
Zach?
Yeah, that's kind of just to reiterate what Heath was saying, get the people who are in the field firsthand to, because they'll be able to provide us with what is actually going on, with
Yeah.
the students and stuff, so.
Yeah.
There's a Dunn guy, Zach,
Kyle?
Kyle Dunn. Like he's a youth worker. I mean, there's people like that you'd have in. They'd give you a pretty good insight to what's taking place out there, as opposed to someone that's sitting behind a desk every day, including myself.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I'm not being, I'm not trying to be facetious. Yeah, but
Ernie?
Yeah, just for clarification, Kyle is a member of the student wellbeing team, is he? Because I don't know Kyle at all. That's it.
Member of one of the Bluefield family schools. So those are the types of people I think you want to come in, and because it is pretty interesting. Yeah.
From frontline ones that are in it day in, day out.
So would we send it to someone like Kyle Dunn, who's on the student wellbeing team, or would we want to look to who's kind of in charge?
There is someone
Yeah.
that's on the front line with them that oversees the whole program.
Yeah.
I just can't remember.
Zach?
Yeah, I would start with the top level and maybe even let them offer suggestions, because the other side of it too is, with what Kyle is gonna be looking out for is gonna be maybe different than, say, someone who's at West Royalty Elementary, you know what I mean? So maybe they can best decide, who should be that person to come.
Okay. So perhaps we can figure out who that person is, but is that enough for you to move forward?
If it's all right with the committee for me to kind of dig into that a little bit deeper and then maybe discuss it through correspondence, but as long as we can decide that it's whoever's above Kyle, then
Yeah.
I think I can take it from there.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Great. Okay. All right. So that would potentially fill up the 3 meetings that we have prior to the sitting. Do we want to leave it there? Are you happy with leaving it there? Or is it easier in case people aren't available to slot in if we had some other priorities?
if you'd like to
Identify.
prioritize one or two more just as a safety net, and then it also gives somewhere to start in the new, or after the session, and we could add a work plan meeting on top of a briefing if you wanted to kind of
Okay.
move through things quicker. So
Okay.
totally up to the committee.
Okay, Ernie?
Yes, thanks, Chair, and I think that's an excellent idea, that in the event of some of the ones, groups that we have identified, if for whatever reason that they can't appear, but we should have one or two backups. One that I would suggest or throw out for discussion would be to have Sandy McDonald from Holland College come in and just give us an overview. And I think that ties into both the education end of it and the economic development end of it as well, in just what are Holland College doing at this point to identify labor shortage gaps. Are they working with, for example, Sam Sanderson of the Construction Industry Association of PEI, and just to get that, receive that overview of Holland College for programs, but more particularly where they see the gaps being and how they are looking at addressing those gaps.
And that, Ernie, that's a great idea, and we also have that on our work plan already, and we had.
Should have reviewed it, should
You didn't even, you just knew that off the top of your head. Because we had the Construction Association come in, and then Skills PEI were supposed to come in right before COVID. And we met, I think all caucuses met with Holland College, and I know that they have some extremely innovative pivots that they've done. I think that that's a really good idea, and it helps us continue on with one of our priorities, and being the labor shortage. Robert?
Just to add in a little bit, kind of saddles on to what Ernie was saying too, but when we're talking about our economic recovery and the labor shortage issue, one that the minister has developed a bit of is these rural learning hubs. And I think would like to, if Minister McKay or anybody with Skills PEI or are planning on making a presentation, I would like to add in a little bit on how that's impacting, because I think that also says about people's ability to learn, i.e. it even goes back to social promotion, so if there's people that are at post-secondary, now they not only can't get access to their post-secondary institution, but they have to go to a location where they have to basically study on their own and try to keep up. There's big challenges that kind of come with that. So now I don't know where yours is at, Ernie, but the one in O'Leary, I understand it's not operational as of yet, but I think it's getting close.
Yeah.
And
the one in my district, it's at the Northport Community Center.
Yeah.
And again, I couldn't say for sure, but I think it's next week, right?
Yeah, so in O'Leary, I think it's kind of similar, but I've got students in my district that were going to UPEI. They went first semester to UPEI, and because of the costs, because if they were still studying from home anyway, they decided that they're going to go home and try to do it from home. As far as we don't know whether they got the internet speeds to be able to keep up. There's a lot of unknowns here. Hopefully, the early learning or these rural learning hubs will be quickly accessible so they can go but how does the learning impact imply to them keeping up in a different environment again? So
And this, were you thinking the minister?
well, whether it's Skills PEI or the Minister of Economic Development, to me they kind of couple in. So I just wanted to put that on the record, that I'd like to, if we're asking, it's one of the questions that I'll be asking. It doesn't have to be on the agenda, but if they be prepared.
Yeah.
How's the rural learning hubs going? It's going to be a question I'll be asking.
Yeah.
So if any ministers watching this or the department or staff, yeah, especially the one in Larry.
And that goes well with kind of checking in with student gaps too, and at the post-secondary level. Okay, so those are two good suggestions. Are there any other suggestions, Heath?
No, but I sent, Alicia does have the names now for the Bluefield family of schools, so it's.
I believe the team lead is Amanda Petrie, according to what he said. So if we're all in agreement to send the letter to her, then
Great. We all okay to do that? Fantastic. So we'll send a letter to her. So we've got Sandy McDonald from Holland College to come in and talk to us about various things, how they've pivoted labor shortage, where they're seeing kind of, and where they're able to fill some gaps. I think that that's important for, for us. in considering, as you said, the economic regrowth. So how does everybody feel about Sandy McDonald or a representative from Holland College? Perhaps we send the letter to Sandy and see if it's him or if there's someone else that he would like to come in. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. And the rural learning hubs, any discussion on that?
Well, just
Robert?
other than, add it on to either a skills PEI or Minister of Economic Development and Growth, just to give us an update on that. I mean, it is ongoing. We know what's happening, or it's in the process, but I think by the time we get somebody in here on that, it'd be interesting to see, what kind of uptake did they get? Is everybody aware that these hubs are out there? And, how are the students that are utilizing these hubs, how are they getting along as it pertains to the bigger curriculum that they're having to absorb?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So.
Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. Just on Robbie's point, it seems that if we're bringing Minister McKay in, we wouldn't need to book this as a separate meeting. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this wouldn't be another placeholder in case we can't get our first priorities in. This is just a tag on, so
Okay.
just a point of clarity.
I was going to clarify, so this isn't for that same meeting, it's for another meeting in the future? A same meeting, okay. And as far as the invitation to Minister Jameson, I know it had been discussed to ask about the climate change lens on the economic growth. You want that included in the letter? Or is there anything else you want included in that letter?
Yeah, I guess you could, see what the department's view on carbon pricing and the impacts it might have on economic, I mean, it could be very good, I'm not gonna say it's bad, I'm just saying, there's certainly a lot of questions that you'd derive from that, the impacts of carbon pricing, and it's something that the province, I'm not sure if it's gonna implement or it's just gonna tag on to the federal government's pricing on carbon, but somebody's going to make a decision on that, and what impacts will it have on economic activity in Prince Edward Island as we move forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Robert. Zach? You're good? Okay. So we agree that the rural learning hubs will be tied into our meeting with Minister McKay on economic recovery, and Sandy McDonald or representative from Holland College would be a separate meeting. So we've got room for one more potential. Zach?
Well, again, just to echo what Ernie had said, if Sam Sanderson from the Construction Association of PEI would be tagged on with the Holland College one. If not, one possible might be the Charlottetown Airport Authority, just to hear how COVID has really impacted. I know that we all heard that the flights are kind of low right now. There's only the one flight from, right? So maybe just kind of even to hear from them to see how the impacts have affected their operations. And
Interesting. Yeah. We did have Sam Sanderson in to talk to us, when was that? August 27th, 2019. Not to say things haven't changed dramatically since then. And then the Charlottetown Airport Authority, 2 more suggestions. Love to hear your thoughts. Ernie, and then Robert.
Chair, yes, I think you raised a very good point that when Sam was in before, I think it'd be interesting to receive his perspective of how things have or haven't changed over that time period, really.
Okay. Any discussion on that? You're just making my wheels turn a little bit too, because we could also put the gender lens on that as well, right? Because one of the things I've had numerous discussions with Sam about, I'm sure we all have, is getting women into the trades, and so we could. What does everybody think of that? I mean, it would be a general discussion, but we would, that would be part of it as well. Okay. Ernie?
Yes, thanks, Chair. And I think just in the letter that does go to Sam, if it could provide that clarity to him, that one of the things, or 2 of the things that we would appreciate hearing is, since his last presentation to the Standing Committee, what, if any, changes, developments with regard to the industry as a whole, with regard to training and the like, if there's any new perspectives that he has seen over that time period, and certainly incorporate the gender lens into it as well, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does everyone agree with that? Okay. The other thing that Zach mentioned was hearing from the Charlottetown Airport Authority. Robert? Oh, yeah, sorry, Robert, I skipped right over you there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the Charlottetown Airport there, I mean, we are down to basically one flight a day now going into that airport. But I think the bigger impact that I feel on the airport authorities, I mean, the airport authority itself is going to be impacted, but the impact on our economy from freight, air freight, like, so if I take the oyster industry, lobster that are shipped out, so one flight a day, can it handle the amount of freight that has to still go out of here, and or has it diverted a fair bunch of freight that has to go out to Halifax? In other words, it has to be trucked from here to Halifax to get on a plane. And I really do think about the oyster industry and so those things that tend to be more perishable, and they have to get to a market fairly quickly. Now, I'm sure those markets have declined too, but they're not, mussels, all those types of things. So I think if the airport authority's coming in, I'd like to have them make sure they give us some sense of numbers of the freight side of this. This is not only about passengers that are air travelers. And the other side, maybe freight hasn't been impacted, but my understanding is that most passenger airlines usually have a cargo belly full of freight that's going to and fro. Like I say, I always see lobsters and oysters and stuff getting on the plane. Not passengers carrying them, but I mean, putting them in.
They were just walking on.
Pick a bunch of stuff with them. But so a lot of that stuff gets set out. So I just think that that's a big impact on our move forward. And how long is before this is going to be corrected? Like, the flight's going to start coming back shortly. So.
Yeah, good point. Heath?
Well, I think, if you're talking about airlines, you're talking about exports, there's, we may as well bring in the Tourism Industry Association at the same time, and maybe the aquaculture, Canada's Food Island, and you could do it all in one session and just ask them questions about what each sector is faced with for the coming year of 2021, because obviously it's going to be a detriment to some of those industries, so it might be worthwhile to.
Yeah, okay. Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with you, Heath. And one of the things that we'd had on our list previously was a discussion on the state of small business, tourism, and nonprofits during the pandemic. TIPI was one of the groups we had talked about bringing in previously. PEI Restaurant Association, Community Sector Network. There were a number of ideas that we had had on that, and I think the impacts are broader than. So I wouldn't want to be looking at it from a very specific lens of just the impacts for the airport. I would like to have that broader discussion on the economy, personally.
Okay. So how do we see that playing out here? So are we saying that the Charlottetown Authority would be a part of this bigger group of people that we'd like to hear from in the economy? Is that?
Yes, that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
People. We did it with CUPE and it seemed to work not too bad, so, and just maybe if they want to give us a 5-minute presentation or something and then fire some questions at them, I don't think it'll take long for them to respond.
No.
They're
Yeah.
likely in a little bit of a,
They're probably ready for that meeting right now. And so we've got a group, some potential guests that we had named here, and I'll just read them off. We had Taipei, Chambers of Commerce, PEI Restaurant Association, Prince Edward Island Command, the Community Sector Network, and the Community Museums Association of PEI, the Charlottetown Airport Authority. How do we want to tackle that? Do we want to just send out an invitation to all those groups? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's potentially 7 guests. That's a day.
Big day.
How,
So we're starting at 9 in the morning, are we? That day?
Zach?
This, I don't know if I'm not speaking out of cue, but this is kind of one of the backups, is it not? You know what I mean? So, do we want to, I guess it kind of really depends on the response we get from Holland College.
Yeah,
You know, because again, we do have a very short window of
Yeah.
opportunity. So,
Yeah. and I mean, they're all important.
Yeah.
But that's something that I think goes along well with hearing from the ministers on the economy and,
yeah.
okay. Limerick, did you put your hand up? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so, yes, please.
Okay. So I don't really have the top three in particular order, but the three that we have prioritized before the House sits again is the Premier's Recovery and Growth Council, having a meeting with Minister Jameson and Minister McKay potentially on the same day, hopefully on the same day, in regards to economic growth, and then there's a few different things like the carbon pricing that was mentioned, and also the rural learning hubs, and the third one is the student wellbeing teams, and that invitation will go out to Amanda Petrie on social promote, and also reach out to the department on social promotion. We also wanted to have that on the same day, potentially, if it fits?
I think so.
Okay.
We,
Even if it was just the briefing, yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you, Jeremy. Even if it was just the briefing,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not at the same time, but back to back.
yeah,
Yeah.
And then our kind of backups from then on is discussing labor shortages. We have Sandy McKay, sending a letter to him, and also Sam Sanderson. And we're going to inquire about the gender lens with that one, so women into trades, and what changes have occurred since in the industry, training, new perspectives, and then Charlottetown Airport Authority, freight sizes, and then the tourism industry is all tied into that one too. So that's economy in the bigger scale. So those are some good starting points for after the session too, to have some invitations out that could be ready to go. I know that sounds like a lot.
it does sound like a lot. And just clarification, it's Sandy McDonald from Holland College.
Oh, sorry.
Not Sandy McKay. So I guess where my confusion lies is that too big of a thing to just leave like that? Is there any more decisions that we have to make on that right now? Because that's like 7 different groups, potentially.
My suggestion might be the last one with all those groups is kind of big, so maybe to leave that one for a minute while the others kind of play out. And that sounds like it would take a little bit of organizing for anyway. So having that one ready to go as a backup might be a lot, but.
So maybe we look at, that could be our kind of starting point after the sitting. Does everyone agree on that? Exciting work plan. Any other comments on that before we move on? Okay.
I
Robert?
would say it's a very ambitious work plan, and for those that have to sit on a lot of committees, I think you want to really prioritize these things. So to me, you divide, like you've got the economic side with your ministers. That part seems to make sense. Maybe do something with education. You're just not going to get a lot done before the next sitting of the legislature. And then after that, well, then you can maybe have a little more time to go further. But
Yeah, thank you. Dive in after that. Lynn?
Oh, I
you're
was
good?
agreeing
Okay.
with him.
Yeah,
That's all.
okay. All right. So I think we're good for the work plan for now.
Just as far as the new things that were kind of added, as far as things that were kind of already sitting on the work plan, are we prioritizing those above going forward, just so I can kind of organize things?
Robert?
I would say yes to that, but I think the other part of it is that trying to get them to schedule at a time and all those things that you may not be able to get your number one right as number one. So I think just I would say between the chair and the clerk, try to use your judgment of what we just indicated here and get something scheduled in and say a week's time or 2 weeks' time, and then we'll go from there.
Everybody agree with that? Lovely. Okay. Any new business that anybody would like to bring forward?
Last 4 items.
Heath, you looked like you were ready to go there. You took your glasses off. I was And, all right, so if that is it for now, I guess that we, do I need a motion to adjourn? Can I get a motion to adjourn? Lynn Lund, meeting adjourned.